terms of, like, you were talking about financial payments and financial services as one of the forefront problems. Can you give us some use cases in terms of all projects that you've seen that is working really well at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously a big one is initial coin offerings, and there we're seeing a variety of different things. Some are looking a little bit more like a security, for example. Others are more like a utility token where you're not getting any sort of underlying interest in the entity or issuing body, but there might be a sort of a right to a future service that this company which is offering the token is actually going to develop. And those different things have different policy implications, and I think two big areas which we're seeing straight up is money laundering, as I mentioned, and that's definitely been a focus of the Financial Action Task Force. Secondly, also financial education and consumer protection. But what's also we're seeing is the rise of initial coin offerings to be used particularly for small to medium enterprises as a way of raising capital or simply raising funding. For example, in 2018 we saw that about in terms of the total funds raised through IPOs compared to total funds raised through ICOs, it's about 12% of ICOs compared to the IPO market. So it's small, but it's definitely growing, seen huge growth since 2014. And that's something that we're aware of as obviously an interesting new way to, in a sense, formalise, for example, the crowdfunding market. But also there are some risks that we need to make sure are properly taken into account.
Yeah, so for the people who don't really understand initial coin offering, ICOs are a way of crowdfunding money for projects, like blockchain projects. And it's great to hear that there is a global movement in terms of setting policies and regulations around that. I know the Australian government has recently the Treasury anyways, has recently called for the public to put in their response or their opinions about how ICOs should be regulated in Australia. And it's great to hear that the OECD is also setting global policies for that as well. In terms of the ICO model, I think that's also changing quite a bit. How do you and blockchain moves so quickly. How do you actually keep up with everything? Like, by the time I think all this actually happens, there's a new regulation that needs to be in place, and then you're still trying to, create the last one. So how do you, keep up to date with all these new changes?
It's definitely always a struggle for regulators. The market moves very, very quickly, new developments, and also wanting to make sure that when regulators do step in, that they do so appropriately and proportionally. So, we are, I guess there is a certain caution that it's important not to move too quickly, but also recognising that if governments don't move at all, there are risks that you're opening up the community for. So look, in terms of how I actually stay across everything that's happening, it's forums like the ADC forum that we've been here at in Adelaide, which is really, really important in terms of understanding what's happening in the community, because what they do is they bring together, not just policy makers like myself, but also people who are really actually developing products, and that's a very important part of the ecosystem to understand what's going on and really engaging with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of you get a lot of knowledge from all different areas, but I do think the community feedback is also something that's really important. I'm glad to hear regulators are also taking that into account.